Hey guys, welcome to this episode of Context is King. I'm Rebecca Brayton, and with me as always is WatchMojo founder and CEO Ashkan Karbasfrooshan to discuss the email he sent me this morning with the subject line, "So we're selling."
No, that's not what I said.
That's what the subject line was.
Oh, I thought you would start off with having seen the email. So we're selling? Question mark.
There was no question mark.
No, it was busy. It was very early. No, we are not. But care to put some context into it?
Well, it basically you've hired bankers to do your dirty work.
Yeah, it's not so much the dirty work.
Delegate.
I had an internal memo for the company's perspective, and then I had one for external. And I mean, it starts off with, I think for better or worse, me being the wannabe M&A banker, having studied finance. This is something I always dealt with myself. And when we were smaller, I had a lot of time to talk to the team, focus on product, strategy, and growth initiatives. And I guess the same way that I went from handling all lawyer stuff myself to hiring a law firm to deal with certain areas and hiring a sales organization instead of also handling sales and managing indirectly through others a team of 60 people, 60, 70 people. I just got to a point this year where I was spending 20, 30% of my time talking to investors or possible strategic partners, and it just got to me that it was actually the opposite. I was actually realizing that, you know what, I'm spending a lot of my time doing this, but I probably will never sell. And by virtue of investing all this time myself, I'm not getting to things that I'd rather be doing. So I kind of said, if you're not really going to sell, let somebody else manage it, because so much of my rationale for handling it myself was to be able to get to meet and know the people that I would eventually work with, most likely after a deal. So this was kind of very different, and that's why I'm so transparent about it, because it could mean the opposite. Now, I've always felt that there's a 25, 30% chance eventually we do sell, and at a given point, it might go up to about 40, 50, maybe even 60%, but that's more the context than anything else.
Speaking of context, my next thing is context. Would you want to give the history a little bit of what kind of investments have come your way?
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, so to give a very quick condense, we started off after we ran out of money in 2007. Lehman blew up. Okay, so 2006 when we got sued by News Corp, frivolous, meritless, all of the investor interest went away. So we kind of had to fend for ourselves. It's like you think you're part of this army and the rest of the army leaves you, you're kind of stranded. And we kind of survived until we thrived. But then when Lehman blew up, nobody wanted to invest in anything, right? Investors were all jittery. So we always had a lot of conversations at first with other companies that wanted us to be part of them. And, it was kind of like, well, what would that look like? And I never had the impetus to be like, hey, let's do this. So it's always been like a melange of outside investor that comes and then all of a sudden goes, okay, could you, instead of having one woman that's going to give birth in 9 months, they're like, what if we give you more resources and you get 9 women in a room and try to give birth in a month? And I'm like, it doesn't work like that. Content takes time. Media takes time. Things that scale quickly are not sustainable, and things that, are sustainable don't scale overnight. So I kind of was a bit more wise and conservative in that sense. Other people use that word wise. I would not ever use that about myself. And then we've always had media companies. Every year, like right now, this year we've had 5 conversations in the last couple months. And it's draining. And what happens is, let's be very candid. I called the post on LinkedIn the art of filtering and buffering. There's a lot of people that show up and they love you and they're so impressed. And then you start to essentially negotiate against people. And if you start the company, as much as you want to be modest and humble, you kind of got to tell people eventually to, stuff it if they're just negotiating for the sake of negotiating. So it was easier at some point to just say, you know what, these are bankers, American Psycho. There's a reason. Like, let them be the hammer and, bruise sharp elbows, and I could kind of be the diplomat and statesman.
And in terms of why now, it's just...
I've gone through a big... This is going to be like, you're going to think you're my shrink. In the last 2 years, I've gone through a lot where
your lawyer's your shrink.
The lawyer's my shrink. Oh, yeah, previous context. I've gone through a lot in the last 2 years where I've kind of like turning 40, now 41, seeing where the company's at. My kids are a bit older. I'm in a good spot overall, and I realize I really want to go back to do all of the things that I punted on before, whether it's to start the label, whether it's to do the events the way I think they should be done, international the way I think makes sense, managing the team, We don't need to grow for growth's sake. I want to have a team and an army of people that want to be on this, on this mission, not a bunch of mercenaries that in the end aren't really going to move the needle and just give me a headache, And so I'm very candid about that, right? Like I have a lot of faults, but I know exactly what I want to do. So I don't want to manage, and everybody's going to be interested in what we do because what we do is and this is, I'm not talking our book as they say. Big companies can never do what we do, because they will come, like Fox did this with not the Daily, they had this app, I forgot anyway, but it was this app that they launched. They threw $60 million at it because they're fucking News Corp, and that's what they have to do. They're never going to be modest and humble and dip their toes. They're going to do a big cannonball, crush everything, and think that's the way they do it. And it's like, hey, more rounds, more drinks, another crate of lobster. And then they're like, shit, this costs money. 9 women can't give birth in a month. Then they scale back. Morale is affected. And so, long story short, it's like Chris Rock, since a girl's been 12, every guy's tried to you. They don't mean to be too crude. That's 2 F-bombs in it.
That's pretty crude.
But it's very crude. But so every media company that sees WatchMojo wants us to be part of them because it's something they would love to have. Efficient, lean, mean, digital, short form, snackable, YouTube. You get it. And so I found, this is like, you're seeing, I was like every day of every week of every month of every year for the past 13 years, I've been talking to somebody who comes along and makes all these promises and is really interested in what we do. And then slowly but surely, it's like, oh, wait, it's the other shoe drops. And because I'm negotiating effectively against them, I have to be the statesman and the diplomat, even when they're peeing, and I'm not talking about anybody, I swear when I say this, even when they are peeing on my leg and saying that it's raining. So I just got to a point where I said, I'm not a banker. I studied finance. I've done an admirable job at many things, but this is not what I do. And so I just got to a point where I said, just give it to somebody else. Let them deal with it, That's it. Yeah. I feel like, weights upon weights, leaving my shoulders and just doing the things I want to do, basically.
Fair enough.
That's as transparent, as candid as you'll get.
Right. Well,
and that's the thing, sorry. Most people, when people usually do this stuff, they're always like, we don't comment. Bullshit. Even John at Bloomberg was like, I'd like to do a story. So he had the exclusive. And he goes, do you want to go on the record? I'm like, yeah, why wouldn't I go on the record? Who is it? Who is leaking if it's not me? I don't have a board member or an investor. It's basically me. So I was like, yeah, sure. This only is realistic. So this, what you see, this kind of unfiltered approach is what I eventually end up doing when I'm talking, and that's not the way it should be done, right? So it was time.
What do you think? Is Ash unfiltered enough? Let us know in the comments.
Unhinged or unfiltered? Which one?
Ooh, that's your next book.
Is the URL secured? I still gotta write contextisking.com.
Oh, geez.
I got the URL, then I worked backwards to write a book, and this whole show. That's the madness.
Isn't that your thing? Yeah. Anyway, let us know in the comments, and we'll see you next time.